All right, well, we are glad that you guys have joined us here for these next few videos as we talk about the position of elders and church elders, as you see on the screen behind me. So there are lots of different people who make up our Capstone family. Some of them grew up in the Baptist tradition. Some of them grew up as a denomination with Methodist or Presbyterian. Some grew up Catholic. This is the first time they've ever really been a part of a church family. So when we talk about church structure, or we talk about specifically the position of elders, it means a lot of different people, a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And for some, they have no idea what we're talking about. So we're going to take these next few videos just to really kind of establish, looking to Scripture, what an elder is, why we need elders, what are the qualifications for elders, and then what is our process of finding those elders and establishing those elders through our Capstone church family. So let's first of all talk about what Scripture doesn't tell us. So remember, Scripture is both prescriptive and descriptive. Prescriptive means it tells us what to do. It tells us how to do those things. Descriptive means it kind of describes what needs to happen, but it doesn't exactly tell us how or what. And that's kind of when we look at elders, because we don't see a specific thing about, hey, this is how many elders there should be, or this is how long they should serve, or any of that. We do see some qualifications of elders, which we'll look at in our next video. But remember, Scripture is more of a missionary field guide. So what the beauty of it is that what we see, especially in the descriptive of church structure, is that the structure we establish in Fountain Inn may look different than a church in Hong Kong or in the jungles of the Amazon or on the mountains of the Himalayas, but we can still all be biblical. And so it gives us the freedom to choose what those structures look like, but also understanding that we want to stick to what Scripture lays out for us. So in the New Testament, we see that when Paul would establish New Testament churches, that he would establish elders over those churches. So that's one of the reasons why we say, okay, well, Paul established elders over the churches coming out of the church of Israel and the churches they had. And they would have elders who would be over those. And so we see that specifically in Acts 14:23. It says, and when they had appointed elders for them in every church, with prayer and fasting, they committed them to the Lord in whom they had believed. So if we look at Acts and these churches that Paul establishes, we see that he would establish these elders to be over them. And so we see that in the New Testament there were lots of churches, and all those churches, Jerusalem had elders, Church of Ephesus had elders, Crete had elders, Rome had elders, Colossae had elders, and all the churches of Asia Minor had elders. So really we see that as we study elders in the New Testament, that there are really two purposes of this position. First of all was that they were seen as the overseers, or the shepherds of the church. So they are called to gauge the health of the church. They look at those who make up the church, and they would keep watch over the church like a shepherd would over the flock. And the idea that they would look around and they would say, oh, we see a threat that's coming to us. Or we would say, hey, this has an opportunity to divide us. We need to be more united in that. They look at the mission and vision of the church that they have been called to lead over and to oversee and to make sure that they stay on that same course. And so they're really seen as the overseers, and they're keepers over the mission and over the vision and over the flock. And so they're looking at the big picture of what's happening there in the church. And so they're understanding that they watch and they listen and they gauge the direction of the church, and they protect that mission, they protect the unity, they oversee really what that looks like in the church. But not only does it give them elders of that they're called to be overseers and shepherds, but they're also called to be teachers. And so they not only lead and oversee, they set direction, but they also teach. Now, sometimes people can think, well, that means they have to be on stage all the time, or they have to be on Sunday morning, or they have to be preaching or teaching to large crowds. And what we would say is that it just doesn't mean that they're on stage, but it means that they can answer questions. When people in our Capstone community may have questions. And so that might be in a community group. That might mean over coffee, but they understand doctrine. They understand theology. They can explain the very difficulties and maybe even confusing parts of Scripture or the Christian faith, and they can explain it in a simple way. Now that does you might be someone who you're thinking about who might be an elder, or you might be considering, well, I can't do that. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person in any form of way. It just may mean that you're not ready for that position yet. And so that position is someone who can explain Scripture well. They can explain the complicated simple. They can have a conversation with someone, and maybe even someone who doesn't agree with them, and can have it in a mannerly way. And so we see this as a way that this position and these two parts of one to be overseer and shepherd of our capstone flock, but then also not only that, but they're also able to teach, and they're able to lead, and they're able to answer any type of questions. And so that's really what we see in the New Testament, of really that role of what an elder is and why we need elders. And so at Capstone, we view this as a biblical position that leads, shepherds, protects, and teaches our Capstone family. And so we believe this is a very important position that keeps us on track and accountable to the mission that God has given us. And so there's kind of the what and of what an elder is. And so next we'll learn what are those qualifications. So if you'd like to learn more about the qualifications, you'll want to move on to our next video under this elder series.